Los Angeles is the densest urban area in the United States, not the densest neighborhood in Los Angeles, not the densest part of downtown. The entire urban area of Los Angeles taken as a whole is denser than New York, denser than Chicago, denser than every other major metro in the country. The Census Bureau has confirmed this in every census from 1990 to 2020. It is not a recent quirk. It has been true for 30 years. This is not the way most people think about LA. So before the comments fill up with people explaining that they drove 12 lanes of freeway to get to a strip mall last Tuesday, let's talk about what this actually means and why the number is both completely accurate and deeply misleading at the same time. The first problem with comparing LA and New York is that the most obvious comparison, city versus city, is essentially worthless. The city of Los Angeles has boundaries that are the result of a century of annexation decisions, legal disputes, and deals made between water rights holders and civic leaders. The outcome is a shape that looks like someone lost a cartography bet. There is a narrow strip running from the main city body down to San Pedro at the port, a feature so bizarre that city planners sometimes call it the shoestring. There are holes cut out for Beverly Hills and West Hollywood and other municipalities that declined to be absorbed at various points in history. The boundaries of the city of Los Angeles do not describe a coherent urban unit. They describe a political history. New York City is more sensible but still arbitrary in its own way. The 5 boroughs reflect a consolidation decision from 1898 that made sense at the time. Whether they reflect the actual shape of the New York urban economy in 2026 is a separate question. Comparing the official population density of these two cities tells you something about their administrative histories. It does not tell you much about how dense the places actually are to live in. The next option is the metropolitan area, which groups together counties that have strong economic and commuting ties to the central city. This is a much better comparison than city boundaries because it captures more of the actual economic unit, but it has its own problem. Counties contain a lot of land that nobody lives on. In California, this matters a great deal. The Los Angeles metro area, defined by county groupings, encompasses enormous stretches of the San Gabriel Mountains, the Santa Monica Mountains, and other elevated terrain that is neither urban nor suburban, and that nobody is realistically commuting through to get to work. Including all that empty mountainous land in the calculation makes the metro area look less dense than the actual developed portion of it is. Metro area comparisons understate California's density because California's counties tend to be very large with substantial uninhabited terrain. Los Angeles's mountains are visually dramatic and mostly empty, and including them in a density calculation is roughly like including the Atlantic Ocean in a measurement of Manhattan's population density. Technically defensible, practically misleading. The definition that works best for this comparison is the one the U.S. Census Bureau calls the urban area. It groups together all continuously connected developed land and treats it as a single city, stopping where the development stops regardless of county lines or city boundaries. If you drive continuously through developed streets from one point to another without hitting a gap in the urban fabric, the Census Bureau considers you to be in the same urban area. Under this definition, the Los Angeles urban area is the densest in the United States, with nearly 7,000 people per square mile. New York comes in around 5,000 people per square mile. And here is where it gets counterintuitive. New York is not even second. Under the urban area definition, the second densest large urban area in the US is San Francisco, then Honolulu, and then New York in 4th place. Ahead of New York is also San Jose, a city whose downtown skyline is distinctive primarily for looking like a place where people have meetings rather than a place where anyone lives. Las Vegas also ranks ahead of New York. That last one requires its own explanation, and we will get there. This finding has held across 4 consecutive censuses. It is not a methodology quirk from a single year or a boundary drawing accident. It is a consistent feature of how these cities are actually built, which is the part that most people find difficult to accept when they have spent any time driving in LA. To understand why LA ranks above New York, you need to think about what happens when you average a very wide range versus a narrower one. This is a mathematical point, but the intuition is straightforward. New York's density is not a single number. Manhattan is extraordinarily dense, with approximately 70,000 people per square mile in the densest parts. Nothing in Los Angeles comes close to that. The low-rise, compactly built neighborhoods of Brooklyn and Jersey City are denser than most American housing. But the New York urban area also includes enormous stretches of Long Island, outer Connecticut suburbs, and semi-rural exurban development, where houses sit on large lots with significant spacing between them. The New York urban area swings between the most intense density in the Western Hemisphere and some of the lowest density suburban development in the eastern United States. Los Angeles has nothing that rivals Manhattan. There is no equivalent concentration of high-rise residential density anywhere in the LA urban area. But Los Angeles also does not reach the very low suburban densities that cover large portions of the New York area. A standard residential street of detached homes in a typical LA neighborhood is denser than equivalent development on Long Island, not because the homes are smaller or the buildings are taller, but because the lots themselves are smaller. Less land per house means more houses per square mile. The average density of a wide range that includes both extremes ends up lower than the average of a narrower range that sits consistently in the middle. New York is a region of very high-density urban neighborhoods and very low-density suburban sprawl. Los Angeles is a region of consistently medium-density development almost everywhere. The lot size point is the explanation for something else that looks strange in the density rankings, why California dominates the list, and why Las Vegas is on it. California's average residential lot size is approximately 8,327 square feet, the second smallest of any state. The only state with smaller average lots is Nevada at 7,405 square feet. Compare those to North Carolina's average of roughly 16,000 square feet, or Vermont's average of more than 78,000 square feet. California and Nevada simply put more houses per acre than comparable suburban development elsewhere in the country. This is why several of the 10 densest large urban areas in the United States are California cities. Not because California has abundant high-rise housing, it does not, but because California's sprawl is built on smaller parcels than comparable sprawl in Texas or the Carolinas or the Midwest. The suburban development looks similar from the street. The density numbers are noticeably different because of what is happening at the property line level. Las Vegas appears on the densest urban areas list for the same reason. Greater Las Vegas has almost no residential high-rise development. Its density comes entirely from the fact that its suburban homes sit on Nevada-sized lots, which are the smallest in the country. The math produces a higher density number, even though the visual experience of driving through the Las Vegas suburbs is indistinguishable from any other American Sunbelt sprawl. The density is in the lot sizes, not in the building heights. This also answers the anti-housing argument that sometimes gets made in California, the one that says California is already full and there is nowhere left to put people. California is dense by American suburban standards, but dense by those standards means second smallest lots, not Manhattan. The density figures show a state that avoided the most spread out low-density suburban development that dominates much of the rest of the country. That is meaningfully different from a state that has run out of room. There is a significant difference between being toward the high end of suburban density in America and being genuinely full, and California is firmly the former. Now for the number that actually tells you what it feels like to live in a city. The standard way of calculating density, dividing total population by total land area, gives every square mile of land in the urban area equal weight in the calculation. That means a square mile of Long Island exurbs with 1,000 residents counts the same as a square mile of Brooklyn with 30,000 residents. The exurb square mile covers the same amount of land, so it pulls the average down just as heavily as the Brooklyn square mile pulls it up. Population-weighted density solves this by weighting each neighborhood by how many people live there rather than how much land it covers. Under this method, a dense neighborhood with 30,000 residents carries 30 times as much influence on the average as a sparse neighborhood with 1,000 residents. The result reflects what density the average person in the urban area actually experiences on a daily basis. When you run the numbers this way, New York reclaims its intuitive position at the top by a significant margin. The dense urban core of New York, where the majority of the region's population actually lives, dominates the calculation. San Francisco moves to second. Los Angeles falls to approximately fourth. The standard density number shows LA as denser because the low-density suburban areas of New York cover enormous amounts of land and drag the land-based average down significantly. The population-weighted density number shows New York as denser because the average New Yorker, despite the existence of Long Island, still lives in a relatively dense urban environment. The two methods are measuring something real. The standard method measures how land is developed. The population-weighted method measures how people actually live. Both numbers are real. They measure different things. The standard urban area density tells you something true about how suburban development patterns differ between cities. The population-weighted density tells you something true about what the experience of living in a city is actually like for most of its residents. LA, being the densest urban area in the US, has been true for 30 years and will probably remain true for the foreseeable future, because the conditions that produced it are structural. California's small lot suburban development pattern did not happen by accident. It is the result of land prices and urban growth boundaries and zoning that prevented the sprawl from getting as spread out as it did in Texas or the Southeast. The absence of the very low-density exurbia that surrounds New York is a product of geography and cost as much as planning. But the effect is the same. Los Angeles covers an enormous amount of space with a consistent medium density throughout, and that consistency is what the census is measuring. New York is the densest city to live in by any measure that accounts for where most of its population actually is. LA is the densest urban area by land because it manages to be consistently medium density across the enormous amount of space it covers. The strange reason LA is denser than New York is that New York's suburbs are less dense than LA's suburbs. Which sounds like a simpler explanation than it actually is, because it requires knowing why that is true. And the answer is lot sizes in California and Nevada versus lot sizes in the rest of the country. The suburbs look similar. The property lines are where the difference lives.